Hello and welcome back to Nerd News Today, Toy Fair 2021. Now joining me on the other side of the screen, we've got the owner of Squatchy Games, who also just happens to be the designer and illustrator of the very new Cryptid Cafe board game. And just to let you guys know who are watching this right now, there is a Kickstarter going on at the moment for it, and best of all, it's already been completely funded. So if you're watching this video and you like what you hear, head over to the Kickstarter. But hey, let's say hi to Chip Cole, because he's the guy behind all this. Chip, how's it going today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you bringing me onto the show. I'm very, very excited about this.
Absolutely. When I saw the game, I thought it was like super cute, super clever concept, and looks like a lot of fun, easy to play. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But Chip, first things first, I got to ask you the question we're asking everybody this weekend. That's what was your favorite toy as a kid growing up?
Oh,
Oh, no punches here right from the get go.
right. As far as action figures and stuff like that go, it would be all the original Star Wars figures, right? I mean, I remember, gosh, being 6 or 7 and getting I don't know if it was called the junkyard, but it's basically that pit where they built all the robots and all that. Oh, that was just amazing Christmas to get
Oh,
that toy.
you had the Droid Factory.
The Droid Factory, that's what it's called. Yeah. When I got that, oh, I was like, yeah, running out to the kid, all the neighbor kids. Look what I got, the Droid Factory. Yeah, that was awesome.
That's
Yeah,
a really
I
great
remember
one.
that
That's
one
still a great
vividly.
one.
Yeah. From a board game standpoint, my favorite back in the day was Dark Tower, which they did a reissue, a remake just recently by another publisher. But I played all summer playing that game.
So let's talk a little bit about Cryptid Cafe. What was the inspiration to make a board game? I don't know if you're a toy designer full time, but why the decision to go into board games?
So that kind of again ties back into Dark Tower. My parents exposed us to not the normal games as kids. Like a lot of kids were playing Scrabble, Monopoly, that kind of thing. We played Feudal. We played Acquire, Dark Tower, Twixt. We played all these like bookshelf board games. So we already had kind of a deeper understanding of these more strategic games growing up. And then there was a break there where video games kind of came into play. And so we played a lot of those. And then I want to say about 6 years ago, a friend of ours brought over Ticket to Ride. And oh my gosh, my love instantly like surged back. I'm like, this is amazing. You played for about a year or so, and I'm like, okay, I got to start doing this. This is what I was called to do. I need to make these board games. And so at the time, I was a graphic designer and illustrator for marketing departments and firms and stuff like that. And after my third layoff, I was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm just going to do my own thing. And here's Squatchy Games. Here we are. And so now full-time, I do illustration and graphic design for other publishers, and then I'm also in the process of making our own games.
So yeah, so tell us about the actual making of the board game, because you worked on this with your child, right?
Right. So my oldest son, Lennon, I was actually designing another game that's based off of mechs and kaijus, very similar to Pacific Rim. That's kind of where that storyline goes. And he was very excited. Like, oh, I'm going to make a game too. I'm like, yeah, do it. Let's do it. Yeah. And so he came to me one day and he had this game where you're serving customers at a restaurant. And it was rough. I was obviously very rough. I mean, he was only 13 at the time. So didn't have all the mechanics and, the math figured out and so forth, but it had something. So while I was working mine, he was working his, we continued to develop his a little bit further. And it finally got to the point where it was like, yeah, this needs to be our first game. This is the one that we should come out with. It's from a production standpoint, is not as challenging as what I was trying to produce on my first game. So this would allow us to get our feet wet, prove that we can actually create a game from start to finish and deliver it to the customers and kind of build up that rapport before we move on to something that might require a lot more bits and pieces and more moving parts to it. And so that would also reduce our chance of failing. So he came up with this game, and originally it was towards human customers. Like we were actually serving just regular hamburgers and hot dogs to humans. And when it came time to illustrate it, I was bored out of my mind. Like, this is just so not fun. Like, not necessarily the gameplay, but it just wasn't, you weren't getting lost, right? It wasn't like you were being taken to another world, being immersed into like, some kind of D&D quest kind of thing where you can actually just push out everything and be absorbed into this event, right? And so we decided, let's change this up. And we went from like a human game to serving aliens in space. And then finally, we got some inspiration from Harry and the Hendersons. I think it happened to be on TV. And I was like, what if Harry, after he was taken, after the Hendersons sent him back into the forest, took what he learned about the real world, and created a cafe right in the Rocky Mountains and started serving all these creatures. And that's it. That's where it went from. So that's where the original game Harry's Place, which we tried launching back in August and failed to fund, became eventually Cryptid Cafe.
It's a really great story behind it too. I love the fact that you're doing this with your son, and now it's again you didn't have the success the first time around, but you're doing it again. You learn from your mistakes, and here you are now. And you guys got funded
Oh
in
yeah,
like what was it, like a day? Was it less than a day?
it was 30 hours.
30 hours. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's insane. So yeah, I can't get over that. But let's talk a little bit before we go into that Kickstarter. Let's discuss the story itself of the game. Let's go into the lore of Cryptid Cafe.
Sure. So basically, you're controlling Sasquatch servers, right? And we have a Kraken who's the chef. And he keeps preparing all these delectable menu items. We've got these really unique menu items. And what you're trying to do is collect those menu items from the chef and serve these cryptids that are coming from around the world. I mean, they're all over the place. We have Chupacabra, which I believe is from Mexico. We have the Snallygaster, which has German ties. So it goes back to German lore. So we did a really good job of trying to incorporate as many creatures as we could that weren't just based solely in the US. Granted, there are a few of them here, quite a few actually that are here, but we have the Bunya from Australia, and then some of the more traditional ones, Mothman, Loch Ness Monster, obviously the Sasquatch, who is the server, is not actually a customer. But yeah, so you take all that and you serve these creatures, and assuming that they're happy, they'll leave you a nice tip. And if they're even our money is actually based off of a Greek coin that has a sea serpent on it. So it's Kronos, I think is what it's a Kronos coin is what I believe it's called. I'll have to double check that, but we actually based the coin off of that because that's based off of the cryptids that the Greeks knew about, which was a sea serpent, which is back in the day. So it's got a lot of cool ties to it. But yeah, so basically you finish serving all these customers, you're earning these tips, and you lose some money if the customers walk out. You lose money if you wasted food. So there's kind of a component of making sure you're managing your resources. And then yeah, at the end of the day, whoever has the most tips is the legendary server.
Which is basically just like my time at Applebee's. I remember that very, very well. So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay mechanics here. And I know you've got the board there with you. You've got some pieces there with us that
Yeah,
maybe you could kind of show us off. So tell us how
sure,
the
sure,
game
sure.
actually plays.
Sure. So the main board is going to be this. You can see the Kraken chef, and he's got the different ingredients or different menu items, and then we have these placements here where you'll actually set your servers. So I guess working left to right or right to left each way. We have the espresso. We have a Cinnamonstre roll, a hot apple spider, a BLTE sandwich, which is basically a brains, lettuce, tomato, and eyeball sandwich, and then albondigas soup, which really didn't change too much other than adding the E right in the middle of it and then adding bones to the soup, which would be much different from the meatballs that it's derived from. But basically, you have this main board and there's a whole phase where you're sending out, let's see if we can get this better on camera here without blocking it with my hand. There we go. You're sending out this Sasquatch server and you're placing it on the board in one of the 3 locations. And then the whole first round, the server basically sending out servers. Everyone's going to send out their server, and then the board's full. But none of the food is collected yet. That happens in the next round, which is phase 2, and that's where we do tip sharing and then the food collection. And basically, what you can do is you can share your tips with the Kraken to move up in line. So as long as you're the server who is last in line, not necessarily last spot, but just last in line. So you could be here and still be last in line. You're allowed to share 1 coin for every space you want to move up. Now, you can only do this at 1 location. So if I do it here, if I'm last in line here at the espresso, I can't do it when I'm at the hot apple spider. And that's really where some of the strategy starts coming in. You start thinking, you're already thinking about phase 2 in phase 1 because you're knowing, okay, you're thinking, I can't tip this one, so I gotta make sure I get as many as I can at that one. Or I want to make sure I get the max 3 of 1 piece or 1 menu item. So I'm gonna go to the number 1 spot and pay to move up to the top and guarantee that I get it. So there's a lot of this like a little bit of strategy in the first, and then there's a little bit of tactics in the second, right? Once everyone's positions have been resolved, you start collecting all that food, and that's where you'll start serving your customers, which would be phase 3 of the game. And then, so like in phase 3, every player is going to have their own server board, and we have this satisfaction tracker that goes along the top. So when a customer is served in the green zone, they're the most satisfied, and they get at least more and more dissatisfied as they move down the track. And then we kind of have your serving tray. This is where you're going to keep the food that you've earned from the Kraken, and you'll also keep your tips. And then this side will be where you place the customers that have been successfully served, and any creature that has walked out will be on the walkout side, which probably helps if I show you a customer really quick to see how they actually interact. So like here we have the Loveland Frogman, right? He's got his order at the top here, and he wants basically a couple of espressos, and he wants some some BLTE sandwiches. And then along the bottom, you can see how it's color coded to match up with the board. So in this case, if it's green, they match up, and you would get 3 coins if you were satisfied at this point, and then it kind of moves down, and you get less and less. You also have a penalty, so if they actually do walk out, this Loveland Frogman would take one of your coins at the end of the game. Basically, you're giving it to a manager because you lost that customer and he's not happy about it. And then, yeah, so that's kind of how that works.
So it's a pretty fun concept, pretty easy to pick up, I think. So yeah, we talked about earlier how this was Kickstarter previously, didn't quite make it. Here you are now doing it one more time, and you got it done lickety split. So what
Yeah.
did you guys learn from that first go around that you used this time around to improve the whole process?
Our biggest mistake was not having an audience. So we worked a lot harder on building our audience this time around. So I think we had, when we launched Harry's Place, we only had an email subscriber list of 100 people. And we had maybe 300 people on Facebook and maybe a couple hundred on Instagram and a couple hundred on Twitter, which I'm sure there was a lot of crossover, right? So it was just not a very large audience. And then this time around, we had over 1,000 email subscribers. We had 500 on Facebook, 400 something on Instagram, and we really didn't push Twitter a lot. It's just not a platform that we're that good at yet. So we focused mainly on those 3. But having a huge email subscriber list was crucial for us. And then, so that was kind of the audience portion of that. We tried to fix that as much as we could. Then we got more involved in the community, right? We were kind of previously involved, but now we were asking people for feedback. What would you do to this creature? How would you make them different? How would you make this cryptid feel like they're involved in the environment? So like, you know, the Loveland Frogman, he's using his magic wand to make the salt and pepper shaker dance around in the air. So we got that feedback from some of the larger gaming groups, and we weren't selling. We were just saying, we really want to know, what would you do differently? And I think just 2 days ago, we still need one more water cryptid. So we just asked everyone yesterday or 2 days ago, come up with some ideas for a water cryptid. Maybe we'll put it in a game. I mean, because we've got too many sea serpents in the game right now. So we're like, we want something different. So what have you thought of? What do you know of that I might not know of in my research? And yeah, let me have it. And, you know, if we pick one, we'll use it. Like, I think the hot apple spider was actually user driven. We needed a 5th menu item, and we had all these things like tiramisu. It was called Terror Musu, right? Which was a great name. I thought, oh, that was really good, but we really wanted a drink. And then sure enough, someone came with hot apple spider, and yeah, they're going to get a copy of the game for doing that because, you know, they're making our game that much better, and they deserve a little reward for it. So we had the audience portion, and then we got the community portion, which we got more people involved in it, made them feel like they were actually part of the process. And the truth is they were. I mean, they were actually adding to it. And then finally, the illustrations. Like, I bunkered down and I went way more into the illustrations than I did before. And because we had this cryptid, we settled on this all-in cryptid thematic, right? It became a lot easier to pull on these creatures, because before we were kind of just inventing creatures out of the air. We did have kids submitting ideas for designs when it's Harry's Place, but now that we actually had things to work from, right? We can go and research this Snallygash, or we can go and research Mothman, things like that, and then come up with our own versions of those. And then we'd share those out on Instagram with people who are in, you know, tag it with, you know, Cryptid, Mothman and stuff, and people were just loving it, absolutely loving it. It's been kind of humbling to have people say that they love the art so much, right? Because it isn't something that I get to put out there as much as I'd like, and knowing that people like my style, it has been really cool. Basically, you have audience, we have involvement in the community, and we just basically upgraded the game entirely from a presentation standpoint. And those 3 things just, yeah, they hit a home run with it.
That sounds great. Yeah, and, you know, audience engagement is such a big part of it too. But even then, you know, it is a numbers game. But I've seen people who had, you know, we actually spoke to someone this weekend who had an enormous following with this product, but then when they launched the Kickstarter, it just completely crumbled because the rewards weren't really there. And I think you guys also have pretty nicely priced rewards and just really good deals overall. So just kind of talk
Yeah.
us through what the reward tiers are on the Kickstarter right now.
The base game is $29. That's basically the retail version of the game. The really only difference between retail and deluxe is when we get into some wooden tokens. So retail version, they still have the wood and Sasquatch servers, and you get those in the deluxe version. And actually, we've had people start, actually tomorrow, they're going to start voting on 4 unique cryptids to join Sasquatch server. So now and actually we've even changed their name. They're now called Creeples. So that'd be like a cryptid meatball. So we kind of put that together and called Creeples. Probably need to trademark that as soon as I can. But so in the deluxe version of the game, you're going to get the addition of those special Creeples. And then all of the tokens, which are basically punchboard in the retail version, are actually heat transfer wood tokens. And that's for both the resource tokens and for the coin tokens, which puts it right around almost 200 wooden tokens just for those, which is pretty crazy. That's a lot of wood in a game, and it's only $10 more. It's pretty nuts. So yeah, that's kind of the big difference between the two. It's almost a no-brainer. Like, well, 29 or 39. Yeah, I'm going to go 39, and we're going to get this really cool reward. And then we've done some unique add-ons where 2-for-1 shipping. So you can get 2 copies of the game for the same shipping price. So that's a great way for people to, if they, a friend of you and if 2 friends want to ship, they can split the shipping cost, and that brings it down even cheaper. It's a great way to get it into the EU. We've actually got EU-friendly, Canadian-friendly, Australian, and UK-friendly shipping now. So we don't have to worry about any customs charges being added to our backers there. And even then, they can just still reduce their costs if they just went in with someone on the game. And then I think one last add-on was the espresso coffee. So we actually partnered with a coffee company up here in Denver, and they're going to roast the beans for us. And we got custom Cryptid Cafe coffee mugs, although people would like to see some features on it. So maybe we'll change them up. But right now they just have the Cryptid Cafe logo on it. And we have the espresso blend coffee bag. And so a lot of people are adding that on, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it's really great, very affordable. And again, folks, if you're interested in this game, it's already been funded, so it is completely safe. Go all in, jump ahead, spend all your money. You're going to get the game no matter what.
Exactly. Please do.
So I know we're talking a little bit far ahead, and the game is now just, we're still doing the Kickstarter as we do this video, but are there plans for expansions for this game, or do you have like maybe some completely new game ideas in your head that you want to get out in the next year or next years, perhaps?
As far as the expansion for this game, we have something in the works. I don't think it's going to be a full expansion. I think it might be a micro expansion that's actually included this time around. We might just throw it in there. We're not, or it might be a part of a stretch goal. It's this close to being just perfectly played. I want to make sure it plays right before I can say, yes, we're including this in as a stretch goal. Let's now you get this little miniature expansion pack that kind of goes with the game. We're just not quite there yet. So we got some testing to do this week. And if we can get that nailed down, then I can finally with confidence say, yes, this is our new stretch goal. You guys are going to love it. It's fantastic. It adds in a whole new little twist to the game. So for this game, we do have that kind of in the works. It's not there yet. As far as future games, yeah, we got 7 different games already lined up. We have a large, like I think I was alluding to earlier, we have this game that's kind of in the Pacific Rim realm, right, where you're creating these kaijus and you're creating the Jaegers, although in this case we actually call them their different name, but they're within that realm. So you're building your own Jaeger and you're fighting these kaijus as they're coming through the gate. It's got a really, really cool timeline mechanic to it where I don't want to say it's like Pandemic. It has that sense of stress where you're freaking out about getting your mech done in time before this gate completely opens. And so it's got really cool, it's a worker placement game. It's got a really cool mechanic on how when you're placing your workers, it's actually contributing to this gate opening at the same time. So there's a kind of like risk reward thing going on. Like, do I go here? Do I not go here? Does the gate open? I mean, are we all dead kind of thing? So we have that one going on. And then we have something that's more a little bit lighter, like Cryptid Cafe. And it's a whole playground series of games. And we're actually calling it the Playground series. And they're based off of games that kids play in the playground that we kind of reimagined into tabletop games, and they're all going to be basically the same size box. And there's going to be this whole entire series that we got coming out that we're really, really excited about.
So that's fantastic news. A lot of stuff coming from Squatchy Games this year and beyond. So for anyone who's watching this video right now and they've missed out on the Kickstarter, will Cryptid Cafe be available any other ways besides that?
Yeah, so the deluxe version will be available eventually through our own online store and at conferences. That's the only way you'll be able to get that deluxe version with all those extra wooden bits. We are working on deals for distribution with trying to get the retail version into game stores, maybe some big box stores, that kind of thing right now. And that's being done with other publishers who've already kind of set their feet into the distribution channel. So we are working with a couple of people on that. We do have a retailer pledge level on this Kickstarter. So some of these game stores, you might actually see copies of the retail version there. They do have the option of buying the deluxe version as well during the campaign, so you might see one or the other at your local favorite game store.
We're going to have links for the Kickstarter, of course, at the YouTube description below. But in the meantime, Chip, how can folks follow you guys on social media?
We have our Facebook page, so it's Squatchy Games. So facebook.com/Squatchy Games. We're also on Instagram, and we also have a Twitter presence as well. I will admit it's not our best presence, but we are trying to get better at Twitter as we go. But yeah, those are basically our big three channels right there. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, where we'll be announcing more of the titles that we plan on working on. And that's just squatchygames.com. We've got a million buttons on there where you can subscribe to the newsletter, as well as a link straight to the Kickstarter page.
So everybody go check out Squatchy Games. And if you're interested in the game, go support Cryptid Cafe on Kickstarter. Really fun concept, as you guys heard here. If you don't believe me, just go to the Kickstarter page, look for yourself. I think you'll be hooked too. So again, Chip, congratulations on learning from your mistakes in the first go around and getting yourselves out there successfully so quickly. An amazing story, great game. I wish the best for you and Squatchy Games.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
So everybody else, stick around because we've got more Nerd News Today Toy Fair 2021 coming right up.